Next time you're sitting on a plane, take a proper look at the window right beside you. Notice anything about it? The corners are round. Every single one of them, gently curved. Not sharp and square, like the windows in your house or your car. Softly rounded off. You've probably never once stopped to wonder why. And honestly, almost nobody ever has. But that plain little rounded shape has a surprisingly dark story hiding behind it. Because believe it or not, airplane windows weren't always round at all. Once upon a time they were square, and that innocent square shape quietly killed people. To understand how, you first need to know what a plane actually endures up in the sky. Because an aircraft in flight is nothing like a building sitting safely on the ground. When a plane reaches its cruising height, it's around 7 miles above the earth. And the air that high up is dangerously thin, far too thin for a human to breathe. So the cabin is sealed shut and pumped full of thick, pressurized air to keep everyone alive. Inside, it feels about as comfortable as a mountain town. But that comfort comes at a cost. All that trapped pressure pushes outward, turning the whole body of the plane into a kind of balloon. The difference is so great the fuselage is squeezed like a fizzy drinks can under pressure. So the metal skin actually swells and stretches just a tiny bit every time the plane climbs. Then it lands, the pressure is released, and the metal quietly shrinks back to size. Stretch, then shrink. Stretch, then shrink. On and on it goes. Every single flight, thousands upon thousands of times across the aircraft's life. And that endless, invisible flexing is exactly where the danger was hiding. Now let's rewind all the way back to 1952. Britain proudly unveils something the world had simply never seen before, a jet for passengers. The de Havilland Comet. It was sleek, astonishingly fast, and it flew higher and smoother than any airliner before it. It soared clean above the rough weather, and passengers adored it. This was the future of travel. Airlines all around the world lined up to buy one. And running along its smooth, silver body sat rows of neat, elegant, square windows. For 2 whole years, the Comet was the pride of a nation. And then came 1954, January the 10th. A Comet takes off from Rome, heading home to London. It climbs to 27,000 feet. By every measure, a completely ordinary flight. And then, with no warning whatsoever, it suddenly breaks apart in midair. It falls into the sea near the island of Elba. Tragically, everyone on board is lost. A shocked nation is left asking one desperate question. What could possibly have gone wrong? The entire Comet fleet is grounded while engineers search frantically for a cause. They inspect every part they can think of, and yet they find nothing obviously wrong. Perhaps it was simply a freak, one-off accident, they conclude. And so the Comet flies again. Then, barely a few weeks later, the unthinkable happens all over again. April the 8th. Another comet lifts off from Rome. It climbs normally, and then, without explanation, the radio just falls silent. This one has broken apart as well, somewhere out over the sea near Naples. 2 brand new jets. The exact same story, both falling out of a clear blue sky. The comet is grounded for good, and now the entire world is demanding an answer. What happened next became one of the most brilliant engineering investigations ever attempted. You might assume a violent storm had simply torn the planes apart, but it hadn't. First, they faced the enormous task of raising the wreckage from the seabed. Piece by painstaking piece, they hauled it up and laid every fragment out. Then they carefully rebuilt the shattered aircraft like a vast and impossible jigsaw. But the true breakthrough came from one bold and rather ingenious experiment. The problem was, they couldn't simply wait years for a plane to wear out on its own. So they took a whole Comet fuselage and sealed it inside a giant tank of water. Then they pumped the water pressure up and down, again and again and again. Each single cycle perfectly imitated one flight. Pressure up, then pressure down. They were fast-forwarding through thousands of flights, all safely on the ground. And then, after thousands of these cycles, the fuselage finally gave way. It cracked, and at last, they could see the precise spot where it all began. The crack had started at the corner of a small opening cut into the plane's metal skin. A sharp, square corner. The one place where the metal was quietly weakest. To see why, we have to meet an invisible enemy that engineers call metal fatigue. Take an ordinary paperclip. Bend it just once, and it's completely fine. But bend it back and forth, over and over, and something changes deep inside the metal. Then suddenly it snaps clean in two, even though you never once pulled on it hard. That is fatigue. Not a single big force, but thousands of small ones silently adding up. And the plane's metal skin was doing that very same thing, one flight at a time. But here is the truly crucial part. Why did the cracks always begin at the corner? Picture the stress inside the metal as invisible lines of force, flowing a bit like water. Around a smooth, gentle curve, that flow simply slides past and spreads itself out. But at a sharp square corner, the flow slams straight into the point and piles up. All of that force, crammed into one tiny spot. And that is exactly where cracks are born. A rounded corner, though, has no such point. The stress just flows calmly around it. And that, at long last, is the answer to our simple little question. Round off the corners, and that deadly stress spot vanishes almost entirely. So every single airliner built since has worn softly rounded windows. And it isn't only the windows. Every door, every hatch, every opening is rounded too. It's the very same reason a submarine's portholes are round, deep beneath the sea. When something must hold back enormous pressure, curves will always beat corners. And look closely on your next flight, because there's one more secret to spot: a tiny hole. Many passengers think that little hole is letting air into the cabin. It isn't. It's a breather hole, quietly balancing the pressure between the panes of the window. Because a modern window isn't a single sheet of glass, but three, all working together. So that plain little window is secretly one of the cleverest shapes on the entire plane. A shape written in hard lessons, keeping the whole sky safely on the other side of the glass.